topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Hey, great to have you with us, sharing a part of your day. We're going to be talking about the FBI cover-up, all right? I mean, it's obvious they're protecting the Bidens, and along the way, they're also stymieing Congress. This is the topic of today's conversation with Steve Bonta. Steve is the executive senior editor for the New American Magazine. Last month, Senator Grassley, the Republican from Iowa, delivered a bombshell, the unredacted version of the certain FBI FD 1023 form. We're hearing a lot about the 1023 form, and we'll hear more about it today. Senator Grassley and House Oversight Committee Chair James Comer, the Republican from Kentucky, have both seen that it alleges that a Ukrainian executive of Burisma Corporation has recordings of conversation with both Hunter Biden and Joe Biden. Right now, let's bring Steve Bonta on the show. Hey, Steve, good to have you with us.
Hi, Bill. Good to be here.
Well, they've got recordings here. And as Senator Grassley said, that Wise was the guy who had the recordings. It was kind of like backup insurance. And it seems that's the coin of the realm these days when it comes to the Beltway, right?
Well, yes. And just a point, we don't know who has the recordings at this point. So I don't think it's not clear whether even the FBI has them. It's simply been alleged that this unnamed executive in Ukraine made them, squirreled them away somewhere. Whether the FBI has copies, we don't know. And I'm not sure that Congress has figured that out yet, although there are rumors afoot that Comer is going to release more pretty damning information sometime this week about this whole issue. There's going to be another drop of, I guess, text messages and this kind of thing. So we'll see. The saga continues.
Right, exactly. Now, this person, this Ukrainian executive, can you give us a little bit more of his background?
We don't know anything about him. All we know is he's a Ukrainian guy. It's not clear whether he's a government official or a quasi-government official, or, I mean, presumably he's a corrupt Ukrainian oligarch of some description, but that doesn't narrow the field down too much. Someone who had dealings with the Bidens within the last, 5 or 10 years, and someone who felt that he clearly needed insurance policy. This was at least the way Senator Grassley put it when he was the person. Ironically, it was not Comer. It was actually Senator Grassley who first mentioned this in a speech in the Senate, that these recordings are alleged to exist. But whether they exist at all on this side of the Atlantic, no one knows publicly yet anyway.
Yes. Well, Steve, after that infamous video of Biden bragging about how he got the prosecutor from Ukraine fired unless he would step away from the investigation of Burisma and his son, you can't blame this latest rendition of why somebody would want to make sure that they were protecting their backs, because they couldn't even trust their own government, much less America. And Joe Biden is president, right?
Well, sure. And this has been borne out, of course, by the Gal Luft story. Yes. I don't know if you've been following that, but just a couple of hours ago, the official indictments against Gal Luft were unveiled. Okay. Now that he's revealed that he is, in fact, still alive and on the run and living in an undisclosed location. This is the guy. He probably poses a bigger threat than any of these other whistleblowers or text messages, because he's an Israeli citizen. I think he's an American citizen also, because he mentions in the video he would really say that he has voting rights. But he has privy knowledge of Biden wheelings and dealings with CFR, with the Chinese energy company and members of the Chinese Communist Party. And they went after him right after the Republicans won the election last November. He's the guy they've been targeting. They had him arrested or detained in Cyprus pending extradition hearings. They're trying to get him to the United States and basically put him away so that he can never talk to Congress, or that if he does, they can always say, well, you see, he's actually a felon and you can't trust his word, and so forth and so on.
Yeah, they're doing everything they can to bruise him up. There's no doubt about it for obvious reasons. It was my understanding that he was, in some respects, some sort of government operative. So he's worked inside the FBI and the CIA, is my understanding. Is that yours as well?
What, Gal Luft?
Yes.
So he was the co-director, maybe still is technically, of a foreign affairs related think tank in Washington, D.C. He's kind of an academic, but he also was a former colonel in the Israeli military, which leads me to suspect probably, I mean, there's no love lost between Benjamin Netanyahu and the Biden administration. So they may well have spirited him out of Cyprus and are hiding him somewhere and maintaining plausible deniability so the U.S. can't come down on Israel and demand they hand him over. He also, by his own admission, was involved in this whole Biden thing with the Chinese energy company. So he's not necessarily a saint in his own right. He does, if you've watched the 12-minute videotape that he sent to the New York Post.
Yes, I did see that.
Yes, he certainly comes across as very plausible. Problem is, as far as we know, he can name names all he wants, but he has no videotapes and no documentary proof. And he's already saying, well, if the Department of Justice has this case against me, then why don't they unseal the minutes of this meeting in Brussels that he had back in 2019 when he first tried to warn the DOJ. He didn't realize he was basically warning the enemy about themselves at the time.
Yes, right.
So, but in any case, he tried to warn them that, you think Trump is corrupt. Well, Biden is even worse, and it's communist China that he has dealings with. And they just took that information and squirreled it away. And I'll bet Congress will never be able to get its hands on it, as long as, obviously, Biden's in the White House.
Exactly. Well, in this meeting in Brussels involved, 6 DOJ officials or, participants associated with the Department of Justice?
Well, allegedly. I mean, that's what Luft is saying. And, of course, the Department of Justice refuses to say anything. They're stonewalling like crazy. But I think, Luft made a very plangent point when he said in this recording, it's not a coincidence that these guys waited years and years, and then all of a sudden, when the Republicans take control of the House and they know there are serious investigations coming, boom, in December, suddenly they decide they're going to come after him and try to, to hustle him off stage before he can do any damage to them, before he can. So he clearly is the key guy. He seems to know more than anyone else, and that's why he's on the run now. And they're trying to hunt him down like a wild animal, and do whatever they can to silence him.
Well, yeah, without a doubt, I don't blame him for being nervous. I mean, we know what happens with people that are not holding to the party line. But the other interesting thing also, when you consider the environment here, Steve, right now, is we're hearing more about whistleblowers. I mean, there seems to be chinks in the armor that, are coming out. I mean, especially the IRS whistleblowers, which, on the surface is very dangerous because, I mean, their careers are done, right?
Well, it's by their own testimony, it's worse than that. Their careers are not only finished, their lives are finished. Yeah. At least the IRS is trying very hard to ruin them so utterly that they, and of course these various FBI whistleblowers as well, ruin these people to make sure that any others who might want to come forth and tattle to the American people about what's going on behind the scenes are maximally disincentivized from doing so.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's no wonder. Gallup took a recent poll, and I don't know, something like 16 of the institutions, the majority of Americans believe are compromised and corrupt.
Well, sure, and the majority of Americans are correct. This is not a new thing. I mean, you and I are both old enough to remember the Clinton years and how appalling that was when all of that corruption came out. It's only gotten worse, but we unfortunately, on the one hand, we have the ideal of a government under the Constitution, rule of law, limited, equal rights for all. And then on the other, we have this increasingly stark reality that there is a bunch of usurping gangsters that seem to be calling the shots. And not just in the White House, but in all of the levels of the executive branch and to a considerable extent in Congress as well.
Yeah, I mean, it is amazing how quick seemingly it occurred. I mean, we can go back and look back in the most recent era of the Obama years and what President Obama meant when he talked about the fundamental transformation of our country. Little did we know to what degree and what depth he was intending, and the remnants of this administration continue. And they're deep in the deep state, and power at all levels, and I think with desperation. And maybe you sense a little bit more of this desperation because, I think at the end of the day, Steve, we can have some hope that there are people like these whistleblowers, these IRS whistleblowers, that are willing to put it all on the line for the sake of this great American idea and the high values that our country stands for. I mean, all it takes is, maybe a couple of more, and maybe the dominoes really start to fall where there's no recovery.
Well, it could be. I mean, I am very optimistic, but in the short run, I think it's not going to be easy. It's going to be probably a long slog to really win our country back. I mean, these powers have become so entrenched and so arrogant and so smugly secure of their own, unassailability that they're with some justification. It's hard to get to them. We're seeing this now. The FBI and the DOJ have effectively told Congress to go scratch on a number of occasions. Yes. Congress, an institution that created them, they're telling them, no, we're not going to reveal this. You can go away. We don't care what you do. And it's kind of frightening to see that this executive branch usurpation that's going on.
Well, this is really treasonous, isn't it? I mean, just in ways that you and I would understand it to be. But, I think Jordan Peterson said it quite clearly that you can become so ideologically fixed that you render yourself stupid. And it seems that these group of acolytes have really, abandoned ship when it comes to common sense or any kind of sense of truthfulness.
Well, in a constitutional republic, usurpation is treason. It's a form of treason. But,
yes,
we like to use polite language. So, of course, as they used to say, none dare call it treason. And this is part of the reason for the pickle that we're in, is that they get away with it, have gotten away with it for so long without being confronted. And I have to say, Bill, I mean, I am pretty impressed with the confrontational approach and the very competent investigation that's been ensuing from the House, the Ways and Means Committee and all these others. They're doing a good job so far. We'll see if anything actually comes of it, because the American people are waiting to say, well, is there going to be accountability? Or in the end, are we just going to say, look at all the terrible things and then just sweep them aside and wait for the next election?
Number one question, you're exactly right, from the voters. Is there going to be accountability? It is taking time, but it's like anything else. You wake up one morning and say, wow, where did that extra 30 pounds come from? And it takes a while, to right the ship and lose the weight. And we're having to go through the process. So yes, I give them credit. And I appreciate, their attention to detail, because you've got to really, I mean, this is a very strategic, multi-level game of chess, so to speak. And you're just hoping that you can get them in the right position to where you can checkmate them, because they've had people, come to Congress and they flat out, like you say, they have the audacity to tell our elected officials, go pound sand. And then they take their own version of the fifth and do everything they can to deflect, obfuscate, and avoid answering the questions, and to run out the clock, so to speak. Because what the Beltway bureaucracy knows is there's new management coming. I mean, the chances of new management coming are there, and they can only hope, for all that they've got, all of the skin in the game that they've got in this, they can hope that maybe they can rig the 2024 election and live another day, or maybe end up with a golden parachute like Comey and the rest of them got, right?
Well, yeah. And I mean, we need to bear in mind that this hasn't happened overnight either. This is the product of several generations of patient Fabian gradualism on the part of what we now call the radical left and the deep state, to erect this sort of parallel government that wields all this de facto power in defiance of the law. What we're looking at now, historically, I think, is we're going to answer perhaps for posterity, one for all, the question whether it is possible to reform a constitutional republic under the law without having recourse to what people always had in the past, which is tyranny followed by violence, followed by fragmentation, all the rest of this stuff, the usual remedy when people get desperate and things run out. The question is whether the Constitution is resilient enough, whether our republic is resilient enough, whether our culture, our Christian culture, is resilient enough that we can ultimately turn this thing around, probably over the course of the next several generations, and restore a semblance of constitutional legitimacy to our government.
Well, Steve, I got to tell you that this whole situation has been so bothersome for me. And as I go back and as I mentioned Jordan Peterson and about, people being in their silos and the bureaucrats holding, defiantly to their ideology, it's no wonder. I mean, that they were able to convince, you can call them rhinos. And so they were already leaning in that direction, but they had to convince them, going back to Donald Trump, that first of all, he had to, in a sense, kind of using Donald Trump's terms of how he was able to, Trump, Putin, and even Xi, was he just put out there, he gave them 10% doubt. That he figured all he had to do was have them question maybe 10% the possibility that Trump would retaliate in means that was not going to be beneficial for Russia or China. And it's interesting what the deep state has done is they put in 10% doubt in the minds of the electorate, in our elected officials, with Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell in them, to question that maybe Trump could be an operative. I mean, you got John McCain involved. John McCain, one of the heroes of the Senate, involved in transporting this false document, this dossier, the Steele dossier. He's participating in this. So you've got the machinations of the Republican Party and the Guard participating with the Democrats in validating their own standard bearer, their own president. And this ideology, like a cancer, metastasized and spread throughout the body politic, and especially there on the Beltway, leaving that doubt that maybe Trump was illegitimate in some form. And and here, what do we got? We could have had Obamacare gone, but John McCain, with his infamous thumb down, that he had to look so arrogant and defiant about what he did, the damage that he did to our country. And at the end of the day, you look at those 4 years that Trump gave us: energy independence, a secure border, no wars that everybody said, this illegitimate president, he's going to take us to war. If anything, he started to move us out of Afghanistan after 20 years. Now, the way it was finally executed, obviously, there's lots to be debated on that. And many of us do not agree with how Joe Biden executed the exit out of Afghanistan. But when you look at all the other things that Donald Trump did on behalf of our country, and with the resistance that he had to put up with and tolerate, even from his own party, it's a wonder that he was able to do what he was able to accomplish what he did. Steve, I went on there for a while, so did I lose you here?
That's okay. I had the internet.
I gave you a lot of information there, but it's just, I'm trying to understand, and maybe you might be able to encapsulate, or at least help me further understand this mindset, this ideology that the bureaucrats bought into. And that's in part what we're dealing with today, is that the Democrats and the left have really gone over the top in thinking that anybody that adheres to conservative values or Donald Trump are just evil.
Well, as far as the ideology is concerned, I think that we can sum up. It's the ideology of power, and it's recognizable anywhere, any time or place in history. It has more or less the same contours, and the people who are behind what we call the deep state are people for whom power is not the means, really, but the end, as Orwell portrayed, in 1984 and so forth. That power is what they want. Power is for them, the ultimate form of pleasure. So that's the ideology.
Right.
And as far as Donald Trump is concerned, it seems to me, there are a couple things that need to be said. First of all, I think he seriously underestimated the power of the deep state. Seriously underestimated. Yeah. And he continues to underestimate them because I mean, if you want to see what the deep state thinks they have in store for Donald Trump, and barring a miracle, this is probably how it'll wind up. Look at Brazil. So Jair Bolsonaro, who was the president of Brazil, great guy, friend of Trump, admirer of Trump, anti-communist. He got rid of the Marxist influence, started, took enormous strides toward returning Brazil to some sort of a free country after it had been wrecked by Lula da Silva and others of his ilk. And he was defeated by electoral fraud last year. And last week, then
Steve, let's do this. Let's break for now. We'll come back and we'll pick it up from there on the other side. More from Steve Bonta after this. Stay with us.
If you're living with diabetes and using insulin, you know the pain of pricking your fingers over and over again. Ouch! Well, by wearing a small remote device called a continuous glucose monitor, or CGM, you can reduce the pain of pricking your fingers. If you administer insulin 3 or more times per day or use an insulin pump, call now and learn how a CGM can help you.
Painless. No more pricking my finger.
No finger pricks.
Convenience. They delivered it free and they took care of all the paperwork.
You can reduce pain right away. Plus, it's accurate, easy to use, and helps you spend more time in range. And if you have insurance, you can get a new CGM at little or no out-of-pocket cost. Call now and get free shipping of your new CGM. Plus, we'll bill your insurance for you. 800-823-9853. 800-823-9853. 800-823-9853. That's 800-823-9853.
The FDA issued an import alert for U.S. Customs authorities to detain illegal, disposable, flavored nicotine e-cigarettes from foreign countries, including China. Rich Marianos is a former assistant director for the ATF, now with Georgetown University.
These disposable e-cigarettes have become a real problem. It's encouraging to see the FDA act at the border, but our kids need them to take the next steps and remove these foreign disposables from the store shelves. They have the authority, and now it's time to act.
Sponsored by the Border Security Alliance.
How would you like to get high-speed internet for your home for less than $2 a day? That's right. For about $50 a month, you'll get lightning-fast internet. Are you paying less than $50 a month right now for your internet? Then call Whole Home Connect right now for blazing fast internet at $50 a month with no price increases, no hidden fees, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees. It's a great deal. And guess what? You can try it for 15 days. If you don't like it, you get your money back. But you're gonna love it, and you're gonna love the price. Internet for your home for $50 a month. That's less than $2 a day. Plus, no contracts, no upfront costs, no equipment fees, and our 15-day guarantee. Call now. 800-699-0358. 800-699-0358. 800-699-0358. That's 800-699-0358.
Would you like to hear better for as little as 10 cents a day? Now you can with the all-new Audion hearing aids. The average hearing aid lasts about 3 years. Ours, at only $99 a pair, means you're paying as little as 10 cents a day to hear better. And to make things even better, we'll give you a 45-day money-back guarantee. Skip the doctor and get hearing aids delivered straight to your door. We've eliminated all the middlemen to offer you a factory direct price of only $99 a pair. Join over 300,000 people just like you who took advantage of our 45-day trial offer. Now you can hear better too for just 10 cents a day. Call now and order your $99 pair of Audion hearing aids with a 45-day money-back guarantee. Plus, get free 3 to 5 day shipping.
800-577-5319. 800-577-5319. 800-577-5319. That's 800-577-5319.
We're back with you. Good to have you with us. I'm Bill Martinez. For more information on the show, you can check it out, BillMartinezShow.com. Our guest is Steve Bonta. Steve is with the American Magazine. Steve, real quick, while we got you here, let's talk a little bit about your book. You and I haven't had a chance to get into much detail because we get going and talking about current events, which are all that important. But maybe you can tell our viewers about your book.
Okay, well, the book is written about 20 years ago, so it's a little bit dated. There's some more information, and we're thinking about doing an update pretty soon.
I thought you did an update. I thought there was a Kindle. Maybe it was a Kindle version of the older book, I guess, maybe.
There is, yeah. But I mean, in particular, if we update it, it's about the United Nations system, the history, and so forth. I think probably the major development in the last 20 years or so has been the rise of this global environmentalist movement that has really, really become sort of the linchpin for the whole movement to transform the United Nations into more of a true global government. It's really become the chief pretext. Mm-hmm. So that's an important thing. That was just getting started back at the beginning of this century when I wrote that book.
So much has happened in 20 years. And as you say, fast forward, and here we are in the United Nations now in conjunction with the WHO, potentially setting up these agreements with all the countries of the world to have the WHO be in charge of the administration of any pandemic going forward. This is incredible to me because it wasn't like we can come away after the 2.5 years of the experience that we went through in dealing with this pandemic and the what the WHO did. At the end of the day, I can't come and say, wow, I'm sure glad the WHO was there because they did such a great job. And now we're going to reward them. The Biden administration wants to elevate them to be, the final say and the arbitrator of, in a sense, we're surrendering our sovereignty, but they will be the last word when it comes to dealing with a pandemic here in the United States. But that's just mind-blowing to think of that possibility. But it's more than a possibility as they continue to move closer to securing that arrangement.
Well, yeah. And I mean, did you know that this month, within a few days, I'm not sure of the exact date, there's going to be a meeting by an obscure UN organization that's in charge of the regulation of international shipping. And they're going to try to impose the first ever UN-administered global tax. Did you know that?
Yes. I was aware of this.
Just last month in a meeting in Paris that nobody paid any attention to, although it had, the roster of attendees was a veritable who's who of globalists, including a number of, heads of European state and a couple, I believe, what's her name? Janet Yellen was there.
Yes.
So there were, yeah. And so
you're going, what's her name? Janet Yellen. That's what the Chinese said just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, Mrs. Kowtow. But in any event, so at this meeting, which was held in late June in Paris, the purpose of the meeting was to figure out a compulsory mechanism to fund this new loss and damage international wealth distribution program that was agreed upon last year at the COP27 UN Environmental Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. And the idea there is that climate change is all the fault of the rich countries, and so they now have to begin paying reparations for climate loss and damage to the poor countries to the tune of literally trillions of dollars.
Exactly.
The problem is, how do you get the rich countries to do that? It's one thing for them to all mouth the platitudes and so forth and promise that they're going to pony up the money, but it's another thing to force them to do it. So the idea they hit upon last month was, why don't we impose a UN tax on all international shipping? And we're going to call it a carbon emissions tax. Okay. And we're going to collect it and so forth and so on. And it was agreed upon, received with rapturous enthusiasm, and supposedly it's going to be formalized this month, and then probably be brought into being next year or in 2025. And at that point, the UN system, that will be a major inflection point in the history of the UN system, because for the first time, it will be able to tax directly. It will have a stream of revenue independent of the donations of member states. And that is, of course, one of the key ingredients to becoming a true global government, is having the power to tax.
Exactly. Wow. This is going to be I can't imagine if Donald Trump gets elected in 2024 that Donald Trump is going to go along with paying a tax. What do you think?
I can't. And actually, to circle back to what we were talking about before my internet failed here before the break, I mean, one mistake we shouldn't make is assume that just electing Donald Trump is going to be kind of the end all, because, I mean, obviously the deep state has shown how much power they wield over the electoral process. And of course, now they're just out and daring people to do, including Congress, to do anything about it. They've indicted Donald Trump. They're planning to do to him what Brazil is trying to do to Bolsonaro, put him in prison for the rest of his life. Right. And the solution, obviously, it's nice to have a president like Donald Trump in the White House who seems to take his oath of office and fealty to the Constitution relatively seriously. But the power and extent and wealth and influence of the deep state, as manifest in the judicial system, in the regulatory agencies, obviously in the business world, the woke businesses and so forth and so on, that aren't even really part of the government, is so considerable that I think a more realistic solution, the real way to regain control of our country, in addition to retaking the White House, is to retake Congress and also the state legislatures. I mean, after all, we are a federal republic. The states are, or used to have, considerable power under the Constitution. And so, but that's going to require a more energetic and educated electorate for that to happen. And this is maybe a slow process, but there's a lot of indications that, as you said before, we are turning the ship around.
Yeah, and I think that people are starting to get a grasp of what the truth is here, Steve. I'm optimistic. In fact, I got to tell you, I had actually believed that 2020 was going to be such a resounding defeat of the Democrats that they were going to have to, step away for a while. And I mean, for maybe even 10 years to kind of reconnoiter and reinvent themselves. That didn't happen for obvious reasons, no doubt. And they were able to live another day. But I think that what comes into play here, Steve, is that old Pennzoil commercial is that you can pay me now or pay me later. Obviously, when you pay sooner, the pain of the payment is a lot less as opposed to later. And I believe this to be true, is the Democratic Party is going to realize the added expense and the pain of paying for their sins, so to speak, later. The deep state, no doubt about it, but all this is coming to light. Now, keep in mind, if you remember, we didn't hear about the deep state until Donald Trump came into play. And so how much could Donald Trump really know about the deep state, even fake news, without having to be inside the bubble? And he paid the price. He went inside, saw what was going on, and called it out. But now it takes, you're exactly right, it takes an intelligent and an informed electorate to see what's going on. I'll tell you this little story. Over the weekend, I get a call from the RNC. They're fundraising, right? Hey, can you give us $100? And here's all these great things, on behalf of conservatives and the Republican Party we're doing, and yada, 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 yada. And I'm listening. And normally I don't take those phone calls. I see what they are, and I just ignore them. I send them, to voicemail. But I thought, okay, I had a couple minutes and I wanted to listen to the pitch. So for 2.5 minutes, she's going on and on about all these great things, the Republican Party, everything else. And so finally, after about 2.5 minutes, I said, ma'am, first of all, are you a real person? Are you a robot? I don't know if I'm talking to, because she was just going on. It was, kind of a set speech. And she goes, oh, well, I'm on a computer and I'm reading the presentation. I said, well, yeah, that's obvious because you're just like ripping through this stuff. And I said, but let me say this to you. I do a daily show, and in a sense, I am giving the Republican Party and conservatives in-kind promotion because this is what I believe in, and I'm promoting that. I said, but for 2.5 minutes, you've been telling me all this stuff, but I want you to know the number one issue with my audience and viewers is this, and you need to take note of this because in 2.5 minutes, you didn't even mention this. And that is, we want to know that the RNC is securing the vote. Dead silence. She had nothing to say other than when she caught her breath, she goes, well, can you at least give me $50?
Well, I mean, obviously, like everything else in this world, you do have to have money, to run for office. I mean, I sort of sympathize with that, but it's true. I mean, a lot of people, here's the thing, Bill. I mean, this term conservative that we bandy about so freely, what does it actually mean to be conservative? And I would submit that being conservative is important, but it's the beginning. There are a lot of people out there who are very conservative but aren't necessarily well informed. And so when the Republicans come out with a nice sounding thing that reverberates with their conservative instincts, they don't necessarily ask themselves, well, is this actually, constitutionally legitimate? Or is this a wise idea in the long run? If this, or perhaps the key question, okay, if Republicans in power pass Measure X that sounds conservative and sounds great as long as it's wielded by Republicans whom I trust, how will this same measure be applied when inevitably the Democrats come to power again?
Yeah, without a doubt. Steve, real quick, let's stay on that thought for just a moment. Let's go to break. We've got more from Steve Bonta after this. Stay with us.
If you're 65 or older and Medicare is your main source of insurance, pay close attention right now and listen for details on how you may save thousands of dollars on your healthcare costs. Did you know that Medicare can pay for things like dental visits, home delivery of drugs, even a gym membership? Call us right now and learn how to unlock all your Medicare benefits. Medicare and supplemental plans that we provide can even offer you drug coverage with zero copays and pay for transportation to your doctors. Medicare plans can offer you wonderful money-saving benefits, but you've got to call now. We'll help you get the most out of your Medicare. Make this free, no-obligation call now. Save a ton of money on your healthcare costs and get the code to unlock all your earned Medicare benefits. Paid for by Senior Choice Plans. 800-796-3954. 800-796-3954. That's 800-796-3954.
President Biden recently released a massive $6 trillion budget, the largest budget in U.S. history. And guess who pays the bill? That's right, you, the American taxpayer. American citizens and business owners will be paying more taxes. That's a fact. And if you owe back taxes, they will be coming after you to collect payments. In fact, President Biden also hired thousands more IRS agents to go after you. If you got a letter from the IRS and you know you owe back taxes or you haven't filed in years, don't put your head in the sand. Call us today. We've saved our customers millions of tax dollars. One quick, free phone call will show you how we can reduce your past tax bill and save you thousands. Guaranteed, or you pay nothing. Call now.
800-932-1597. 800-932-1597. That's 800-932-1597. Paid for by the Tax Helpline.
Attention timeshare owners. Tired of the financial stress? Were you misled by the salesperson? Don't or can't use your timeshare anymore? If any of these apply to you, then you may qualify for timeshare cancellation and get the relief you need now. Timeshare Defense Attorneys is the #1 affordable fixed fee legal solution in the country with an A+ Better Business Bureau rating. That's certainly better than my grades. They even offer a 100% client satisfaction guarantee. Let one of their experienced lawyers evaluate your case and explain the process. If they take you as a client, they'll work on your case until it's resolved in your favor, guaranteed. Expect great service and a close working relationship with your lawyer, keeping you informed every step of the way, protecting your rights, interests, and even your credit. It's that simple. Even a kid like me can understand it. The consultation is free. Call today.
800-296-1332. 800-296-1332. That's 800-296-1332.
Well, Well, we're back with you. Bill Martinez here. Very quickly, when you go to BillMartinezShow.com, that is our website. All the information is there. The downloads of all these interviews available to you at your convenience to share with all your friends and family. Because what the show is all about is that you would own your own knowledge. Hopefully, these things that we're sharing with you, Steve and I, is that you just don't take our word for it. You've got to own the knowledge yourself. Hopefully, what it does is motivate you to dig deeper so that, as Steve was sharing with you, is that so often conservatives, they're conservatives by name only, maybe because it kind of like it feels good and it's comfortable. But in this day and age, you've got to know what you stand and what you believe in. The other thing that we've been promoting time and again, seriously, is to know the difference between the legitimate and the counterfeit. There's lots of, fake news, anonymous reporting and that we've been bombarded with, and we just cannot accept that. We need to make sure what's coming into our minds and our spirits is legitimate. But if you don't study the legitimate, you're going to get fooled by the counterfeit. And we know the Democrats, they've been working at their craft and doing this for a long time, and they're really good. And you got to give them credit for what they've been able to do. The other thing that you will notice when you go to our website, there is a donate button. And I had a couple people say to me, he said, Bill, can I donate and use it as a tax deduction? Absolutely. That's what this is all about. We have a 501c3 Hill of Hope that we partner with. So when you click on the donate button, you can donate, use it as a tax deduction, however you need, whenever you're doing your filings. And if you find yourself in need of a tax deduction, we appreciate your offering and your donation to, keep the show on the air and to support our efforts to right the ship here, as Steve said. That's what we got to do. We've got to right the ship, and we've got, Steve Bonta, 70% of the country, according to Rasmussen, believes that we're on the wrong track, right?
Well, that's my understanding. I don't know how they phrase the question.
Yes.
So when you say be on the wrong track, what does that mean? Maybe some people are thinking, well, the United States is on the wrong track because my favorite sports team didn't win. I mean, I don't know what that means. It's a very, very vague, open-ended question, and it doesn't necessarily translate into ballot box results. But
yeah, exactly.
There's a sense of deep dissatisfaction. I think that's fair to say.
Well, clearly that, and as much as you hear that number, I'm always suspicious when, they'll say, 35-40% of the country thinks Joe Biden's doing a good job. Now, I got to tell you, in my circles, maybe I'm just, I don't know, I got to broaden my circles, but in the circles I travel, and even in my travels across the country, ask me how many people I've run into that have said Joe Biden is doing a great job.
How many?
0.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I haven't run into any of those either. But of course, we on the so-called right, we tend to associate with like-minded people in church and work and this kind of thing. But no, I dare say if you were to go to the average, large university campus, I mean, you'd probably find the overwhelming majority of people would express satisfaction with what Joe Biden's doing. I mean, I occasionally do deliberately expose myself to the CNN and the MSNBC type news media just to see what they're saying. And it's like they live in a different cosmos. It really is. And or NPR, listen to NPR. Oh, yeah. And all of these media organs pretty much portray Joe Biden as this urbane, rational, East Coast, liberal, elite, Uncle Joe, kindly old guy. Yeah, he's getting a little bit long in the tooth, but he's still, the steady hand at the tiller after that awful Donald Trump. There are a large number of people, particularly on the, the East and the left coast, and the larger interior urban areas who believe this. And of course, on university campuses. And they do constitute a pretty substantial percentage of the population. Partly it's because they agree with the agenda. I mean, the woke agenda is really quite popular, particularly among people under 30, and partly because they are more or less satisfied with what they're getting from. Well, they don't consume Fox News, they don't watch your show and other shows like it online in the airway and so forth and so on. So they literally, many of them don't even know about all of this.
But Steve, do they get a special discount when they go to the grocery store or something? I mean, is there a special, card if you're a card carrying Democrat that you get a reduction in your groceries, or when you go to the gas? I mean, go to get gas. I mean, these are real issues. I mean, you talk about tabletop issues. The other thing too, I might add, the coveted, suburban housewives, that the Democrats have such a stronghold on. I think there's a disturbance in the force in light of Joe Biden. As you just characterized, this avuncular, old statesman who's been around forever and a nice guy. And then we see what he's done in rejecting his 7th grandchild. The suburban housewife, that doesn't sit well with them.
Well, yeah, I mean, speaking from personal experience as someone who was raised in the East. I don't live in the East now, but is raised in the East by kind of an old Eastern family with, pretty much liberal ideas, being raised with that. I do have maybe some insight into the mindset. And so here are a couple of things that you should know.
So you're telling me they're not going to invite me for Christmas, for Thanksgiving dinner? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, well, I mean, but here are a couple of things about the liberal mindset, and it is a mindset, and it goes back a long ways. I mean, it goes back to in some ways, it's almost a modern sort of deformed version of Puritanism, because many of the things that they do are very much in line with the old Puritans. They don't see it, but the old New England Puritanism is very similar, except that Puritans were religious and God-fearing and Christian. The liberals, of course, typically are not. But a couple of things. First of all, your average liberal is someone who lives in a bubble as far as their income is concerned. If you live in Prince George's County and you're making this huge income, as a lobbyist in D.C. or something like this, or if you're a tenured professor at the University of Chicago or something like this, you don't care that much about the price of gas or the price of groceries the way, say, a farmer in Iowa would. Okay, or a small business owner in any Main Street USA type of setting. The fact is, they make a lot of money now because they have rejiggered the system in such a way that these people who literally produce nothing of value, who are festooned with law degrees and MBAs and degrees in government management or whatever it happens to be, can go and live in the greater DC area or the greater New York area or the greater Chicago area or whatever, and do whatever it is they do in their jobs in which they have basically nil possibility of ever being fired. They have a golden parachute, or what the Chinese call an iron rice bowl, very nice expression in Chinese, which is
like that.
Chinese communist word for a government job that will guarantee, rice in the pot your entire life. And that's what they have. Right. So from their perspective, these, stock market fluctuations and economic recessions are just trivial to them. It doesn't matter. Yes. I mean, the average, remember, the wealthiest counties in the United States are the ones that ring Washington, D.C.
Exactly.
And they're not wealthy because the people living there are the next generation of Sam Waltons. Yeah. It isn't because they've got a bunch of wealthy entrepreneurs who are erecting, great, engines of capitalism. No, they are all the parasitic classes who have turned parasitism on the body politic into the ultimate, career and safety net.
Exactly. Wow.
And I have relatives and friends who have been beneficiaries of this system. And it's remarkable. So if you are a person who who likes going to school, taking classes, getting degrees, why in the world would you take the risk of going to do something productive, like working in a private corporation, or heaven forfend, start your own business with that degree, or even start your own law practice and help people, let's say, when you can go to DC or Manhattan and get a job in which your coffers are going to overflow with taxpayer funds. And, and you don't have to worry about ever getting fired. What a marvelous existence that is. So they live in this cloud cuckoo land of their own construction that we have permitted them to create and sustain and build up. And of course, now they're fighting savagely to keep it. And as you rightly observed, I mean, they certainly perceive Trump, who was and remains, a consummate, free market entrepreneur. They see him as a mortal threat to this whole system of theirs.
Well, Steve, as we wrap things up here, I'm going to give you an opportunity to remind our viewers how they can connect with the New American Magazine and connect with you and, follow your commentaries.
Okay, well, you can read you can subscribe to the New American, visit our website, thenewamerican.com. We also have a daily show, which I frequently co-host. So and we like to bill ourselves as providing the truth behind the news. We are not driven just by the 24-hour news cycle, but we aim to help people understand what's going on, the reality, the principles that undergird all of this.
Well, and what you do so aligns with the philosophy of our show and our commitment to bring the truth to the people and to, give them this information, to be able to have an opportunity like this, Steve, to go and give them a deep dive into these topics again, so that they would be motivated enough to own their own knowledge, do some discovery on these issues so that they will not be fooled because, as you said, the ruling elites, they're not going to give up the control and power that easy. We're going to have to take it away from them, aren't we?
Well, absolutely. And just bear in mind, I mean, this republic was created for a virtuous people. And that means moral virtue. It also means understanding. And neither of those two things are necessarily easy to develop and to maintain, but we have to as citizens in this American republic. Otherwise, we will lose our republic to the unvirtuous.
Exactly. Well, Steve Bonta, the executive senior editor for the New American Magazine. Steve, thank you so much for being with us. I appreciate the time. For more information and to be a part of this mighty Martinez movement to return to God and to save our country, check it out, BillMartinezShow.com. May God bless you and may he keep you and make his face shine upon you. Go and be blessed beyond your imagination. Thank you for being with us.